L.A.B. For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the divisional breakdowns for 2019 here on the Louie T Network. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. We're talking NFC South tonight. Arguably the toughest division in all of football. I think these teams are going to beat the hell out of each other, and it's going to make for a very, very competitive division. One that no one will actually run away with, unlike last year where the Saints pretty much ran and hid with this division. I think this thing's going to come down to the final weeks of the season, and then a victor will be declared. And I think this is going to be a division that, because it's so heavy in terms of the amount of competition that's taking place within the division, that I don't think you're going to have a 13-3 team like you had last year, or a 12-4 even team in this division. I think everyone in the division plays each other very well. You know how family business, you know how the family do it. And there's nothing quite like NFC South family business at times. I mean, there have been some really good contests, some heated contests. Simply put, I'm looking forward to seeing this division unveil in 2019 and seeing what these teams do. I'm actually shocked at the limited amount of games that these teams have on primetime television. I think it's the combination of them and the division that they're playing in the AFC. They're playing the AFC South, which isn't very appealing. It's one of the lesser divisions in football in terms of the teams that you want to see, that the national media wants to see. And so you're not going to see the Jaguars on national television a ton. You're not going to see the Titans. They're not sexy. You're not going to see them on TV a lot. So because they're playing that division, it's the perfect storm. Only 6 primetime games within the division, tied for last with that same division that they're playing in the AFC South. So both South divisions really not getting the respect they deserve in terms of primetime exposure. But that doesn't stop us from seeing this division as one of the better ones in all of football. So let's jump into the NFC South and what this division brings to the table and what I think is going to take place in 2019. We start with the team that won this division a season ago, Heartbreak Hotel, and they've created quite a stir, have the New Orleans Saints, because of what transpired in the NFC Championship game last year and the controversy that ensued. We've had a rule change, and we've already seen that rule change in effect in the first preseason game of the year in the Hall of Fame game. So the Saints, 2 years in a row, have had something memorable happen to them in the postseason. Will they get a third try? Will the third try be the lucky charm? We'll see in 2019. Can the Saints get back to the postseason in this time, third time, be a charm? Let's take a look at the Saints and their schedule. So this is a really, really interesting schedule for all the teams in the division, specifically the Saints, because they won the division. So you get first place teams. Again, you know, this is why I hate looking at the schedule, because we don't know if those first place teams from last year are going to be first place type teams this season. You never can tell, but just looking off of the schedule, based off of what we know of these teams a year ago, and assuming that these same teams are going to be good, it's a tough schedule for this entire division. As we start week 1 at home on a Monday night versus Houston, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this, that the Saints are one of those teams that they generally do not lose at home on primetime television. And so much like Seattle, it's not quite Seattle Seahawks-esque in the sense that it's a death trap, but it's pretty damn close. And so I like this spot for the Saints at home versus the Texans. I don't love the Texans' offensive line. I think the Saints may be able to take advantage of that. So I like the Saints at home. Crowd's going to be raucous. First game of the season, Monday night. I think they're going to roll in that football game. So then you get to a really tough stretch early in the season where these Saints are going to be tested on the road. And Here you meet the team that bounced you from the postseason in your home with a controversial call that went in their favor. But a lot of people forget, yes, a controversial call went in the favor of the Rams, but they still had to go to overtime, stop the Saints, who had the football first offensively, which they ended up picking off Drew Brees, and then connect on like a 50-plus some odd field goal. So everything that happened after the no call, the Saints had a chance to still win the football game, and they didn't. Now you're going to get an opportunity, not the same type of stakes, but you're going to get this game against the Rams early in the season at Los Angeles. I don't like this spot for you, actually. I think you're going to lose this football game here in the rubber match versus the Rams. And then the following week, it doesn't get much easier. You're on the road at Seattle, another spot where I simply just don't like you in that particular game. It's just going to be tough to win back-to-back games against NFC West opponents. The best that division has to offer, you get them in back-to-back weeks on the road. That's going to be a tough, tall order for the Saints. But then the following week, you come back home, you get to kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Not because of the opponent. No, you're getting the NFC East champions from a season ago, the Dallas Cowboys. And they beat you last year, as a matter of fact, late in the season on a Thursday night. However, you're at home, and I just said, tough to beat this Saints team on primetime television at the crib, and that's exactly what's lining up for you here. And you need a win bad after starting the season off 1-2, winning the first game, 2 straight losses. I think you get the win at the crib versus the Cowboys. Will Zeke Elliott be playing in that game? Most likely he will, but hey, who's to say? We don't know what's going to happen. I think they're going to get something done, but you're going to win that game regardless of whether he's in there or not. Then the next week you get Tampa at the crib. That's one you got to have if you're going to win this division. Then you at Jacksonville. This is an intriguing game. I went back and forth because the type of teams that give New Orleans trouble are the teams that can get after Drew Brees and make him uncomfortable. You also have to stop the run. The Jaguars can do that as well. I think they're going to be a tough team defensively this season. And not to say that they weren't last year, but last year I think they had some issues. This year I think they're going to have their shit straight. So I think they're going to be a tough team to deal with in Jacksonville, no less. But I think if anyone can go in there and tame the Jaguars, it's this Saints football team. And I got you going in there and getting a win. The following week, though, you're on the road again, this time against a more formidable opponent, a team that won their division last year and was a double doink away from potentially seeing you later on in the postseason in the Chicago Bears. We've seen this defense stifle elite offenses in the past, and they're capable of dismantling exceptional offenses. And I think that's what might happen here, as I've got you losing that football game against the Chicago Bears on the road. But the following week before your bye, you get Arizona at the crib. And again, if you're going to win a division, you can't afford to lose games like that, especially being that it's at the crib. So you go into the bye week at 5-3. And so you're in a position right now, you're playing good football, you come out of the bye, and the first team you see is the Atlanta Falcons. And so this is at the house. It's always nip and tuck between the Falcons and the Saints. But you're at home, and this is one that you need to get. And because of that, I think you'll do exactly that coming out of the bye, taking care of the Atlanta Falcons. Here's an interesting game here. You're at Tampa Bay. This is an improved Buccaneers team. Bruce Arians, new head coach, Todd Bowles on the defensive side of the football. Don't know if they necessarily have all the requisite parts necessary to be elite defensively quite yet. But Todd Bowles is one of those guys I trust to get the most out of whatever he puts on the field defensively. And because of all the changes in Tampa, I actually think the Buccaneers, who generally play the Saints really tough, I think they get this one here against the New Orleans Saints. So you drop one in the division to the Bucs. The following week, though, you come home for the Panthers. It's always tough against the Panthers, but you seem to really play Carolina well, and I think you'll do the same here and take them down at home in that football game. You go to week 13, Thanksgiving, Thursday night, similar to last year, except table is turned, script is flipped. Instead of you being at home hosting the Atlanta Falcons on Thanksgiving, you're going to Atlanta for Thanksgiving. And instead of you carving up Dirty Bird, that is, for Thanksgiving dinner, I think they'll be using the sword of the Saints to eat really well in Atlanta, as I have the Falcons taking care of the Saints in that game and returning a little bit of the favor from last year's beatdown in Nolans. You go to the next game on the docket, and you're home for San Francisco. They're going to be a much improved football team, but not improved enough to go into the Dome and win. I got you taking care of the 49ers in week number 14. So then you look at the next game, and it's one that I think you've got a legitimate shot at getting against the Indianapolis Colts. This is interesting. I went back and forth on this one, but you're home, and again, for the third time in as many tries, or third time in 4 tries, you're home, primetime television, against a very good opponent, and that's where I give you the edge. The Colts are very capable of coming into New Orleans and winning, but I just don't see it happening. I've got you taking down the Indianapolis Colts in that ball game and getting the win on Monday Night Football. The following week, you're at Tennessee. That could be a trap game. It really could, and I could easily see the Titans defeating you in this football game, but I don't necessarily love what the Titans have defensively. They've still got to sell me on that side of the football. I think you can do some things to them offensively, and I think you'll do enough on the road to get the win versus the Titans. And then you finish up your season in week 17 on the road at Carolina. That could easily be for the division crown, depending on how things shake out for the Panthers in 2019. But that's a tough spot for you on the road at Carolina. Last year, they had you on the ropes. Cam Newton was essentially playing with one arm and had no business playing in the game, but he gave them the best shot to win. You did not score a ton of points. You barely came out of there with a victory. If Cam's healthy, I think the Panthers take care of business in this football game. I got you losing the finale in 2019. However, because of the work you put in all season long, you get to 10-6, and that's good enough for first place in the division with a 3-3 overall mark. And yes, of course, winning the division qualifies you for the postseason. So now we go to the next team in the division, the Atlanta Falcons, who finished second in the division at 7-9, tied with the Carolina Panthers, but a better overall divisional mark gave them the nod in the division. So let's take a look at the Falcons. They were decimated by injuries a season ago. Let's see if they fare better in 2019. So we start the calendar off on the road at Minnesota. That is a really, really tough spot to be in. I don't like that spot for you at all. I think the crowd's going to be juiced in Minnesota. It's their first game, home opener. They're out for blood in 2019 on the Vikings. Didn't have the kind of season they wanted in 2018 with Kirk Cousins in his first year. The defense was up and down. They're going to come out guns a-blazing in their first game at home, and I think you're going to unfortunately be at the wrong end of that. But you get to bounce back the following week. Remember last year, week 1, where you had a ton of injuries that really shaped and molded your season. You start off in Philadelphia and actually returned to the scene of the crime where you were eliminated from the playoffs the previous postseason. And you started out the season against the Super Bowl defending champions on a Thursday night. Had every opportunity to win. Julio Jones not able to come down with the ball late in that game in the end zone. Similar to the playoff game. Seemed like the same thing over again. You lost some key guys in that game, most notably Keanu Neal in that football game. Tough loss to start off your season, and to me, a microcosm of your season last year. you've got a chance to exact a measure of revenge. And revenge is a dish best served what? Cold. And I think the Falcons are going to be cold-blooded in this football game as they're at home on a Sunday night versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Fully expect you to find a way to win that game. The following week, though, you're on the road at Indy. I do not like this spot for you here, as I think you lose on the road to Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts. The following week, though, you have a chance to get back to 500 on the season. Titans coming to town. Looks like a game you should be able to line up and get the dub in, but this is typical Atlanta Falcons. When you think they're supposed to win at the crib, they let someone mosey on in and leave with the dub, and that's what happens here as the Titans come in and upset you at the crib. And right now, your season is in jeopardy. You're on the brink of imploding early in the season. After this loss at home that drops you to 1-3 on the season, you have a team meeting, players only, all right? In that meeting, all the dirty laundry is aired out. Everyone comes out of that meeting on one accord, and you have to save your season the following week on the road at Houston, no less. And it seems like you could easily have your season ended the following week. You drop to 1-4, you're dead. Dead, I tell you. But somehow, after the team meeting, you rally together, you go on the road, and it salvages your season as you beat the Houston Texans in Houston to save your season. Because you were almost dead there. And not only do you save your season there, but it sends you on a little bit of a run because now you got Arizona on the road. Very winnable football game. One that you got to have, one that you will get. That propels you now on a 2-game winning streak, home for the Rams, and now you're hot. You're feeling good about yourself, and you cut through the Rams like a hot knife through butter. The following week, their comrades come to town in the Seattle Seahawks, and again, you're playing top-notch football at this point. Winners of 4 straight after you take down the Seattle Seahawks. And you're looking like a very, very scary team in the NFC all of a sudden after taking down the Seahawks, Rams in successive weeks. But the problem is your bye week comes at the wrong time. You're hot. You don't want to stop playing this hot football. But the bye cools your ass off. And you come off the bye. And all of a sudden, you got the Saints on the road, and they dispose of you. And all the momentum that you had going into the bye week is now gone, and you start to feel the effects there. But you're able to bounce back the following week on the road versus the Panthers and get the win. And you know, in this division, it's not uncommon for a team to go into another family member's house, disrespect them in their crib, come out with a dub. It's not uncommon. We see it all the time, especially when you're talking family business. But this division in particular, teams aren't afraid to go in the other's house and disrespect them in their crib. And that's what I think the Falcons are going to do there to the Carolina Panthers. And let's be honest, the Panthers struggle with the Falcons. The one team I think they have the most trouble with in this division, the Atlanta Falcons. You know, that season when they were 15-1, the one loss, you guessed it, the Atlanta Falcons. So if there's one team in this division that they struggle with, to me, it's the Atlanta Falcons. So they lose that football game. The following week, you got Tampa at the crib. And honestly speaking, this is a game you should win. And Tampa plays you tough every year. But you usually find a way to win. That's not going to happen this time around, though. I think that Tampa's going to get you in this game. I really do. I think they're going to come into Atlanta and find a way to get you in that ball game. Now, Thanksgiving, you bounce back, as I mentioned already. Take care of the Saints. And so right now on the season with 4 games left, you're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5. So you're 6 and 5, 2, 4, 6, 7, excuse me, and 5. And so you're sitting pretty, 7 and 5, 4 games left. Really, you win 3 out of these final 4, get you to 10 and 6. You should be able to get into the postseason with that. Can you find a way to do that? Let's see. So you're at home for Carolina, and unfortunately, Carolina returns the favor to you by coming into your crib when you need it the most, and they get you. All right. The following week, you go on the road to San Francisco. Winnable football game, but not happening. You lose that game as well. And all of a sudden, you go from 7 and 5 to 7 and 7, and you're fighting for your proverbial playoff lives at this point. Now you need to win the final 2 just to have a shot. But you respond at home versus Jacksonville with the win, and you wrap up the season at Tampa, and you avenge a loss earlier in the season to the Bucs by getting a win there as well. Finish up the season at 9 and 7, which is good for second place in the division at 3 and 3 in the division. Or excuse me, that's good for third place in the division. I'm sorry. I apologize. Not second place. And it's not good enough for the postseason, unfortunately, for the Atlanta Falcons, as you just miss out on the postseason. So we go to the Carolina Panthers. And this is a team that started off like gangbusters last year. Cam Newton had the injury, and then the season kind of went down the drain after that. This is a dangerous team, and they look like they're poised to bounce back in 2019. We will see. But they definitely get off to a great start in 2019. And the first game up on the docket, not an easy one. Team that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl last year in the Los Angeles Rams. But the Panthers in week 1 at the crib generally find a way to get it done like they did last year versus Dallas. It was not pretty, but it was gritty, and most importantly, it was a dub. And I anticipate that they find a way to get it done against the Rams at BOA in the home opener. Following week, Thursday Night Football versus Tampa Bay at the crib. You're not losing that game. And you own Tampa Bay. The only time the Buccaneers ever beat you is when Cam Newton is compromised. Remember that game with Derek Anderson throwing 2 picks basically at the goal line, losing that football game? Every time you lose to the Buccaneers, Cam Newton's compromised in some form or fashion. Whether he's hurt and doesn't play, or he shouldn't be playing, but he plays anyway. So if Cam Newton's healthy, and I surmise he'll be healthy in week 2, you're going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You just do. All right? So you go to week 3, and you're at Arizona. Very winnable football game. And you're going to take care of business. So now you're 3-0. Great start to the season. And you're feeling good about yourself. You go on the road at Houston. Very winnable football game. But you don't get it done there. So you get your first loss of the season on the road at the Texans. The following week, you come back home, and there's a little bit of a hangover residual effect from that loss. And it bleeds into the next game, and you lose at home to Jacksonville. So then after that, luckily enough for you, you get to see Tampa Bay again early in the season. So Cam's still healthy, and you take care of business, and you sweep the season series with the Buccaneers. So interesting enough, you got your bye week now. You come off the bye, and it's San Francisco on the road. Very winnable football game once again. However, I think the 49ers get you in that football game. So what was once a promising 3-0 start, now you're 4-3 on the season at home versus the Tennessee Titans in a game that is going to be a defensive struggle, but I think you find a way to win it at home. Then the following week, you go to Green Bay, and every year it seems like the Panthers go on the road and get an improbable win. Last year, for me, that win was against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're losing 17-0 in the fourth quarter. It seems like the game's over. In dramatic fashion, you scored 21 unanswered points and steal that football game. Or was it 20 unanswered points. I think it was 21. I think he missed the extra point in that game. I'm not sure. Bottom line is, he scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and rally and come from behind and steal that game. I think you go on the road and you actually beat Green Bay. I think you're very capable of doing it. And it's not the same Green Bay Packers, and Lambeau Field, home field advantage isn't what it used to be. So you go to the next game at home versus Atlanta, as I mentioned before. That is a game that I believe you lose at the crib to Atlanta. And then the following week, you are at New Orleans. That's a tough one on the road. Don't see you getting that one either. But you get to bounce back the following week at the crib versus the Redskins. And you own the Redskins at home. Where you struggle against the Redskins is on the road. But at home, you've been dominant against the Redskins. And that domination continues in that ball game. As now you get down home stretch. And this is a tough stretch. If you look at all of those teams left on your schedule, at Atlanta, home for Seattle, at Indy, home for New Orleans. That's a tough stretch of football, if I may say so myself. You started off at Atlanta with a big road win there. The only problem is the following week you go home for the Seattle Seahawks, and that's a team that's just not afraid to go in the BOA and win. We saw them do it last year, as a matter of fact. They just know how to play you, and they're going to go into Carolina once again and find a way to upend you late in the season when you really need a dub. The following week, that's why beating Seattle at home would have been so important, because the next week you're on the road at Indy. That's just a tough spot for you to be in, one that I don't like you in, and so you lose that football game. And then you finish up the season at home versus New Orleans. Could be for the division, depending on how the ball bounces throughout the course of the season. Health obviously going to be a big reason why you're either in it or out of it at that point of the season. But either way, I think you get that football game versus the Saints to finish up your season. Much like the Atlanta Falcons, just like the Atlanta Falcons, 2 straight years in a row you finish with the same record. This time, though, you finish 4-2 in the division, and so I have it flip-flopped. You're actually second place in the division, and so that 9-7 record, good enough for second in the division. However, not good enough to qualify for the postseason for the Carolina Panthers. As we finish up this division with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And here is a team in this division that you really don't know what to expect from them. New coaching staff. It's a breath of fresh air for them. A lot of players that are young, new defensive scheme. Really don't know what you're getting out of the Buccaneers here. What are you going to get out of Jameis Winston? A lot of unanswered questions. However, that's exciting if you're a Buccaneers fan. And you start off the excitement of Arians and Bowles and company with a win in week 1 over the San Francisco 49ers at home. Crowd going to be ginned up for a new coaching staff, and it's going to help you get a win at home versus the 49ers. The following week, though, you're on the road on a Thursday night against the Carolina Panthers. I really don't like that spot for you at all. Thus, you go down in that football game. The following week, though, you come back home for the New York Giants. I think they're going to be a horrible team in 2019. So you get the dub there to get to 2-1. Unfortunately for you, that's where all of the fun stops. All right, and when you look at this schedule for a young Bucs team with a lot of unknowns, the schedule can't get much tougher than what you see in front of you. You're on the road at Los Angeles. Don't like that spot at all. That's a loss. The following week, you're at New Orleans. So the 2 teams that played in the NFC Championship game, you get them in back-to-back weeks on the road. So obviously, I don't like you in that spot either. You come home for the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers get you there. And so just like that, you go from 2-1 to now 2-4 on the season heading into your bye week. Much needed at this point to lick your wounds and maybe come back out a better football team. Unfortunately, 2 straight roadies. And really what your demise is here is, if you look at the schedule, 4 out of 5 games on the road against tough opponents. Seattle, Tennessee, New Orleans, Rams, all on the road. One home game sandwiched in between 4 roadies. That's at home against Carolina, a game that you also lose. So the schedule makers did you no favors here. And unfortunately, you come off the bye, and the Titans don't do you a favor. You take a loss there. You then go the following week and take another loss at Seattle. And just like that, your season is falling apart. All right, you started 2-1. Now you're 2-6 after 5 straight losses, 4 of which came on the road. Again, no favors done there by the schedule makers. Finally, you see a team that is very beatable in the Arizona Cardinals, and you take full advantage of it by getting a win and snapping your 5-game losing streak there. However, the damage has already been done. But you're not giving up on the season. You go to New Orleans, the Saints come into town, and you find a way to win that football game as well. So after 5 straight losses, 2 straight wins, you're scratching, you're clawing, you're fighting, you're trying to stay in this thing. And then Atlanta, all right, on the road. You're feeling good about yourself. You go into Atlanta and you win again. So after 5 straight losses, 3 straight wins to get you back to 500, or are you're just a game under 500, and you can smell 500. You feel good about yourself. You're right there on the cusp of getting back. And that's the first thing you got to do when you're digging yourself out of a hole, is get back to 500. And then a really nasty physical defensive team like Jacksonville comes to town, or is at home, and you're coming to town. And unfortunately, this is where all of your fun ends, as the Jaguars take you down in that football game. And that essentially sends you spiraling out of control. It's almost like that team down by 21, late 3rd quarter, early 4th. They make this great, miraculous run to cut it to 3 before the team that was up 21 finishes them off and ends up winning the game by 11. You made a run. Got it to within 1 game of 500, but unfortunately you lose to Jacksonville. The following week, Indy at the crib, another loss. And then the one that really breaks your back, because it's a very winnable football game, Detroit on the road, you lose that game as well. And all that was good is now gone. You do not finish the season on a nasty losing streak, because you beat Houston in week 16 at home. Unfortunately, though, in week 17, you lose to the Atlanta Falcons. And that puts you at 6-10, 2-4 in the division, last place, and of course, not good enough to qualify for the postseason. So the scheduling quirk here for the Bucs, 4 out of 5 game stretch where you're on the road, and that's the stretch that really breaks your back in the season. Scheduling quirk for the Carolina Panthers. The reason they're going to miss out on the postseason, they didn't take care of business at home. Too many losses at the crib in Carolina. So you lose to Jacksonville, that's 1. You lose to the Falcons, that's 2. You lose to the Seahawks, that's 3. Too many losses at home for you to come out of the NFC South as division champs, or to post in the postseason and get to double-digit wins. Falcons, here's the scheduling quirk for the Falcons, and this is interesting. They don't play a single divisional game until after the bye. Their first 8 games are outside of the division. They don't even sniff a divisional opponent. And then look at what happens to them after the bye week. 5 straight games in the division. That's where their season is either going to be won or lost. When it all comes down to it, is you come out of the bye week and you've got 5 straight games in the division, and 6 out of your final 8 are in the division. That's where your season is either going to be won or lost. If you're the Atlanta Falcons, you've got to take care of business within the division in the second half of the season. And for the Saints, the scheduling quirk for them is that they don't lose a single game at home in 2019. They take care of business at the crib, which is why they end up winning the division, unlike Carolina, who doesn't take care of home. Unfortunately for them, they're not as strong on the road. As you can see, a lot of tough road games. A lot of their games on the road are really tough. At Los Angeles, at the Rams, at Seattle, at Chicago on a Sunday night, at Atlanta, obviously in the division, at Carolina in the division, another loss. So they had a tough road schedule, and it's going to bite them squarely in the ass, but it's still good enough because of the damage they do at home going. Did they go undefeated or do they lose one game at home? I believe they win every single game at home. They do. And so they're able to sneak into the playoffs at 10-6 by winning the division. So that, my friends, is the NFC South. We'll see what happens in this division. It's going to be ultra competitive. I think these teams are going to beat the hell out of each other. The Saints are going to win this division at 10-6 by going 3-3 in the division. That's how competitive I think this division is going to be. That the division winner only going to go 500 in the division, but that's good enough to get it done. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, join me for the live feed. We're going to break this thing down. I'm going to get your thoughts on the NFC South live as we get on the phones. We open up Twitter and also the YouTube chat discussion. I'll see you guys then. Have a good one.